Hello, everyone. If you can take a seat, we will allow you to take a break. But if you can have a seat for our next keynote speaker, Land Commissioner Don Buckingham. Dr. Don Buckingham's family was among the first settlers to Texas 9 generations ago, and they had a tough pioneer spirit, and that has been deeply rooted in her personality ever since. She is true to her Texas roots, and her commitment to service began early, serving as a volunteer firefighter and attending Texas A&M Fire School. And she later made history again in 2022, winning a statewide election to become our state's first female land commissioner. Land Commissioner Don Buckingham came from humble roots, growing up on a ranch near the Texas coast, and during college she met the love of her life and husband of 33 years, Ed Buckingham. Don and Ed both went to receive medical degrees from the University of Texas Medical Branch at Galveston before having 2 children and starting successful medical practices within their specialties. She also served in the Texas Senate from 2017 to 2023. In her role as land commissioner, she is also vital to Texans recovering from disasters and the health of our coast. Dawn's greatest love is the Shrine of Liberty, the Alamo. Every day she works tirelessly on a large project to make a visit to the Alamo worthy of the significance of the events that happened there and ensure the Alamo is standing proudly for years to come so our future generations can know and love our Texas history. And I heard she's also working on a Texas emoji on our Apple phones. So please give a round of applause to Land Commissioner Don Buckingham.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. Hi, everybody. I'm Don Buckingham. I'm your land commissioner. And go figure, a few years ago, you never would have imagined that we live in a time where the radical left considers words violence. And so standing up and speaking the right thing is actually an act of bravery every single day. So I want to thank Texas Values. I want to thank you all for being here, because what your participation with Texas Values means is it will be their very best opportunity to keep the Texas that we know and love for future generations. So when I speak, I like to give you a little bit about me, a little bit about what the General Land Office does, because nobody knows what we do. And I tease that we're the agency that touches your life in a positive way every single day, and you had no idea we existed. And then at the end, we'll, of course, take some questions. But to give you a little bit about myself, 9th generation Texan. My family was among the first land grants that came. Ironically, the General Land Office, one of the first cases they settled was against my family in favor of some guy named Austin, because I know it's kind of rude, actually. We were there first, but they honored Austin's Mexican land grant, not our Spanish land grant. So it's a little funny that a few hundred years later, we're back in this spot. I grew up in League City, which is a small town halfway between Houston and Galveston until about 7th grade, and then moved outside of Austin, which in the day was this little podunk school called Westlake. And I know, right? It's amazing how it grows. We lived out on 360, which was barely 2 paved lanes. The bridge wasn't in yet. My mom thought we lived in the boondocks. So it's kind of funny how everything grows. But went to UT, mainly because when I graduated high school, I didn't have money for college. So I found myself in that position where I had to live at home and work 2 jobs so that I could put myself through school, always dreaming that I wanted to be a physician and always wondering if I was going to be able to do that, and always having the world against me saying I was never going to be able to do that. So I have had to claw and scrape and fight for every step along the way. Went to medical school. I was a practicing oculoplastic surgeon here in Austin for about 25 years. No one knows what that is either. So it's an ophthalmologist that has a specialty in tumors around the eye, tear drainage problems, eyelid malpositions. Married to a husband. My husband's a facial plastic surgeon in town. Both of my babies are in medical school. They're 27 and 25. And I thank God every day that my babies love Jesus and are conservative. So let's applaud that. So then you kind of look ahead and you go, how the heck does a doc get to be land commissioner? And honestly, I thought I was the first physician elected statewide, but then we looked back, and I believe it was a governor about in the 1800s that was a physician, but I'm just going to say physician training was different in the 1800s, and so I'm claiming it anyway, and he can come and take it if he feels like he wants that title. But, I just kind of started out early. I finished my medical training, and I figured out pretty quickly that between insurance companies and the government, healthcare is pretty messed up. And you've experienced that. You've gone to the physician. They said you need this x-ray, you need this medicine, and whether it was the insurance company or the government that came back and said you didn't, and how frustrating that is. So I call it patient-centered healthcare. The patients should get what they really need. The doctors should be able to unrestricted do what's best for their patients, and it just shouldn't be so darn hard, right? So that put me in leadership positions in every local, state, national, and international medical organizations. I was testifying here at the Capitol in Austin all the time. I was testifying in Washington, D.C., always trying to drive that. And then I had a major polarizing event. We have those moments, right, in our lives that change our directions entirely. Obama gets elected. Obamacare starts coming down the pike. I'm using my leadership positions across the country to be the most outspoken person against Obamacare in the country, so much so that Bloomberg News sent this young little reporter named Alex. He covers the White House now. I feel like I'm like growing up in the world. So Alex comes down to Texas, and he's like, who are you? Why are you kicking up so much dust about Obamacare? And I'm like, because government-controlled health care is the single worst thing that we have seen in our country. Just ask our veterans and how great the VA care is for them, although they've made improvements in the last few years, but there's nothing great about it. And so we fought and fought and fought. So the article comes out, and I'm sure completely unrelated. Within 2 weeks, I start getting audited. Yeah, and this is sort of supposed to be funny, so when I pause, you just laugh. There you go, we're getting it. I know y'all have been sitting here all day, and they gave me 3 hours to speak, so keep going. Oh, so you're really getting it. But so anyway, the first audit came, and you get that notice, and your stomach drops, and you think the world's going to end, and then you survive it, and you go, yay, let's go celebrate. And then the notice of the second audit came, and we survived that audit unscathed. And then notice of the third audit came, and we survived that unscathed. And then I got notice of the fourth audit. And at that point, I was like, baby, you have just put me in politics. Where is my path? And I start really looking out and changing from just being an advocate to actually being an elected official. About that time, Governor Perry appointed me to the State Board of Educators Certification, and the educators on that board elected me their vice chair. And also about that time, Lieutenant Governor Dewhurst appointed me to something called the Sunset Commission, which if you don't know what that is, it's 12 people, so it's 5 state reps, 5 senators. It's something that Texas almost uniquely does. Most other states do not. I think every other state should implement it. But what we do is we look at all of the state agencies on roughly a 12-year rotating basis to determine should that agency still exist, yes or no. Now, I'm a small government girl. I don't think government does much well. I think it should probably stick to its basic precepts and let the rest of the environment take it, the fair market, all of that. So I love getting rid of government and trying to make it smaller, which is shockingly difficult, by the way. But anyway, so we look at the agencies, roughly 30 agencies every 2 years, and we say, should this agency exist, yes or no? If that answer is no, then we try and get rid of it. If that answer is yes, then we ask a very important second question. Is that agency serving who it's supposed to serve, and do we need a redirect? Because as human beings, we tend to suffer from mission drift. We start out here, we start making our ant pile bigger, we start doing this. Like, I don't know, it's just easy and fun to pick on the city of Austin. Who thinks the city of Austin needs $1 million new logo? Anyone? Nope. So see, exactly. So we try and rein them in and refocus them on who they should serve and are they doing that well, and bring them into standards of practice to keep the bureaucrats from getting out of control. So I also ran for the school board about that time. I joke that I was on the school board before it was cool. The happiest day in my superintendent's life was when I left the school board to run for the Texas Senate, because I actually read my packet. Our first vote, I was going to be a no on, we had a deficit budget, and we were still going to give a bonus to our educators. And I would love to give bonuses to our educators, but I believe you should actually have money in the bank to cash the check. It's kind of a unique thought. So I was going to be a no. So I'm driving from surgery, I'm trying to get to the vote, and as I'm coming into the vote, I'm driving from, downtown, I get 4 phone calls. The superintendent, the president of the school board, the vice president of the school board, and one of the main teachers threatening me that if I didn't vote with them because they had had unanimous votes for 12 years, that they were gonna ruin me and all that kind of stuff. So I said, well, the answer's simple, darling. Vote with me, it'll be unanimous. So I was a no, and it went from there. So then I looked up and my Senate seat came open, and I loved my Senate district. I represented Bandera to Temple to Abilene. I happened to be the first woman to represent Senate District 24. Thank you. Also happened to be your first woman land commissioner. I also was the first Republican who lived in Travis County to ever get elected to the Texas Senate in the entire history of our state. It might have been because I had 16 counties to override the part of Travis County I had, but we're still claiming it. But it's unique growing up in a place that we get outvoted, or we get outvoted growing up. On a good day, Travis County votes 30% Republican. So I grew up immersed in people very different politically from myself. I grew up fighting that battle every day. But I learned a couple things. I learned if you walk up and you smack somebody in the face, guess what? They're not going to listen to you. So what I learned is how to advocate, how to speak, similar to what we saw Charlie Kirk doing with Turning Point USA. I met him when he was really just kind of getting started. He came to a little restaurant out in Bee Cave, Texas, and I had some friends, and they said, you've got to come listen to this kid. And maybe he was 20. I think he was 19. But maybe 20, really young. Well, he passed young, right? And here's this young man, and he just said, look, the way we're going to reach our youth is to take off the labels but represent our conservative principles. So he had his signs. You remember his signs? It's like, big government sucks, you make it, they take it, socialism. Like, they were funny. And they walked onto college campuses and they spoke to the kids in a way that the kids could understand. And he started winning the hearts and minds of our youth, which is incredibly important. I grew up in one of those denominations where you sat in your pew in literally the exact same seat. God forbid a visitor sit in your seat. They would have to have a chat with them. But you sat in your pew in your same seat. You might look around and look somebody, talk to them when you did the passing of the peace. But otherwise, you were like, here's my faith, I'm right here. And now I go to a Bible-based evangelical church, and I am telling you, ladies and gentlemen, we need a little more Jesus in our party, right? Because we cannot just sit in our same place. We cannot just talk to our same people. We cannot just be a part of our own echo chamber and expect to change the world. So we have to walk unapologetically into non-traditional communities and speak our truths. And when we do that, and I've walked into a lot of rooms, well, let me put it this way. I've walked into areas where there is not a single Republican on the ballot other than the statewides. I have brought resources. I have talked to them. I have represented conservative values. I was a little worried I was going to have to pull a knife or two out of my back. My security team gets really nervous when we do that. But they'd never met a Republican, most of those people, when I go into those communities, much less a Republican has never come and personally asked them for their vote. So I just figured it's my job to unapologetically put on the armor of God and go out and represent our conservative and faith values and be able to do that and win the hearts and minds. Because when you do that in a loving way and when you do that where you're unafraid, walk into that, it does change hearts and minds. I'm actually LULAC's highest elected official in the state. I actually spoke at a statewide LULAC convention. That was a little stressful. But we have to go in there. So that's what I do. And I love Texas. And I love every square inch of Texas. And so when you think about the General Land Office, we're the last remaining entity of the Republic of Texas. Because when we were founded, we had just become our own republic, just won our independence. Now, I know Governor Abbott's coming up here. This office predates him by 9 years. He loves it when I remind him of that. But when we were founded, we were the keepers of maps, the guardians of Texas history, and the steward to what today is 13 million acres. And I will tell you, some of the decisions that our founding fathers made have set Texas up for all of our success. So Texas, when we transitioned from a sovereign nation to a state, we retained our unowned lands. Today, that's 13 million acres. It makes me, on your behalf, the largest mineral owner in the state, responsible for the majority of oil and gas in the state. That has funded public education to the tune of $5 billion in the last 2.5 years of my tenure alone. And it puts me in a position, so my favorite baseball player is Altuve, because this little guy, I know, there we go, we got some Astro fans in here. So I tease my itty-bitty baby boy as a 6'3", 225-pound Division I pitcher, now in medical school. So I love baseball, right? Spent a lot of time watching baseball. And Altuve, that little guy, gets up there, and he swings a bat that I swear is just about as big as he is, and he swings for the fences. And he hits it when it's crunch time, right? So fun to watch. And so that's what we try and do for Texas. So when we are the largest landowner and we're the largest mineral owner, we get to stand up and fight unapologetically and with a bigger stick than other mineral owners and landowners can't fight. So for example, the Attorney General gets a whole lot of press for suing the federal government over all the endangered species. But no offense, it's the General Land Office most of the time that's his plaintiff that has standing. In fact, we have gone out and purchased property to better have standing so we can better stand up and the state of Texas can fight against the overreach of the federal government. Now, 1,000,000 times better under Trump, don't get me wrong. But for example, for those of you in this area, the golden cheek warbler being delisted, hey, that's us in the Attorney General's office. Fighting on when Biden shut down the liquefied natural gas exports, we were the ones to file, we're the plaintiff, Attorney General represented us, so we work together, and that's what we want. We want our state agencies, we want our elected officials to be able to work together and combine our powers and stand up for Texas even more. So, you're probably figuring out at this point, and you'll laugh, when I was a kid, I'll backtrack just a smidge, I was 9, and I planned 3 tracks for my life. I was a very, very planning kind of child. I said, first, I want to be a firefighter. I did that in high school as a volunteer firefighter. Went to A&M for fire school, so I claim A&M and UT, so love both. By the way, this is I love you in sign language. It's horns, it's A&M, and little guns up. I don't know what we're going to do with Texas State, something different. But anyway, so then I was like, okay, I'm going to be a doctor. But I already didn't like what government and insurance were doing to healthcare because I come from a family of physicians. My plan was to own my own island, build my own hospital, free of government interference. Of course, I was going to have a jet helicopter to go get groceries, be an orthopedic surgeon, so that was plan 2. And then I was like, I think I want to be president. I don't, by the way, but now. And my dad, and you would have loved my dad, he's super fun. He spits out his food at dinner. He's laughing so hard. And he goes, you will never be a politician. You have no ability to temper what you think, and you have this anti-establishment authority kick that is going to be incredibly problematic for you for your whole life and wanting to be a politician. So it's a little funny. So thank you for liking something different in a politician other than political answers. So thank you for you. I'll give you that. So you can imagine I'm fully capable of starting an international incident within a couple weeks of getting sworn into office. So I'm sworn in and I get the letter from DPS and they say, hey Dawn, we've got these islands in the Rio Grande that are not declared either Texas or Mexico. This is a problem because when they are not declared, the military nor law enforcement can step foot on them. That means that they are safe havens for the cartels. The largest island was 171 acres. We're talking big. What I can tell you we found on the islands are IEDs, structures, of course, guns, ammo, drugs, abused women and children, just what you would expect. So, Ask had been in for 10 years. I'm not really sure what was going on with that. Took me 48 hours. Because I'm like, okay, we're the mapping entity for the state. Where's the center of the river? Everything north of the center of the river by our treaty with Mexico from 1836 is Texas. This is easy, done. So that was fun. So we got in there, we cleared them, we got the wire up. We've done 5 islands so far. We're just looking to see if there are any others because right now, the border's great. We have seen how it flips, yes, so Praise God that Trump won. Our talking point was always that it was the federal policies that were the lures that bring people here. And we have seen this perfectly with the transition to Trump. So right now, the border's great. But we've also seen back in the past, things can change. And we have to be prepared if they change. We have to build as strong and secure of a border as possible. So we continue to be a part of that. Thank you. So also about that time, I got another call from the Texas Facilities Commission, which is the state entity that was building the wall. And they said, hey, Dawn, we have this problematic owner down on the Rio Grande. She won't let law enforcement on her property. Of course, when the bad guys know, they get a free pass. It's the #1 heading up all the crime statistics all along the border. They said, we can get into a costly eminent domain fight, but 1, no one likes eminent domain. And 2, that'll be years. And 3, let's just buy her ranch. So we made her a fair market value. She had mentioned that she would sell it. And so we purchased the ranch within 24 hours of purchasing the ranch. And I will tell you, this is where the original rape trees were found. So within 24 hours, literally that first day, we had the right-of-way for the wall done and negotiated. I got in a big bulldozer, and I bulldozed down a whole bunch of trees as a very demonstrable sign that the things that had been happening on this property are never happening again. And then, ladies, just for you, as a little joke, because we always do what men do, backwards in heels, right? I got in some stiletto American flag heels and bulldozed one tree in those. And my team was like, do you need to, yeah, I know. My team was like, do you need to change shoes? And I'm like, yes. So we have fun with it while we're at it. But besides our state land, it really allows us to jump in and fight for the Texas we know and love every day, and it takes us to every corner. But we also do our veterans benefits, some of them. So let's see, who are our veterans in the room? Let's just acknowledge your service. Raise your hand if you can. Thank you all so very much for your service. So every day I get to serve our veterans, which is a joy and pleasure to me because I'm very clear on the fact that we are the land of the free because of the brave. We have 10 beautiful Thank you. Yes, we have 10 beautiful nursing homes all across the state where our veterans get to come and stay for free, and our Gold Star families and their spouses. We have 5 veteran cemeteries that are lovely across the state. And then Texas is the only state that has a mortgage lending program for our veterans. It's separate from the federal program, but can be combined. And then we get to do fun things in there. So right after, it was a busy first month in office, I got a letter from one of our lady veterans, and she said, hey, Dawn, I'm turning 100 years old next month, and I want 100 birthday cards for my 100th birthday. I'm like, all right. Well, we sent her a bunch of cards. We put it out on social media, and she got several. The most recent one we did got 7,000 birthday cards. I have this glorious picture of her, and she's in a wheelchair. And you know, like you go to the beach, you used to bury people in the sand. She's like all the way up to her neck and just this mountain of birthday cards. So it's super fun. So we get to bring joy and pleasure to all of them. We also do everything coast. We do beach renourishment, habitat restoration, artificial reefing, oil spill cleanup, so many fun things. We're embarking on the largest infrastructure project that the Army Corps of Engineers has ever done. It's called the Coastal Spine. We're starting at Louisiana, going all the way to Mexico, building a series of resiliency borders. It's stuff like dunes, levees, roads. We're also talking about these massive gates that if a big storm surge comes in, because can you imagine if we got a Category 5 hurricane up the Houston Ship Channel, we would shut down the oil and gas production for not just the country, but the majority of the world, because the majority of the jet fuel is processed there for the entire world, so many things, so we have to protect that. So we're doing that, and then of course we do disaster recovery. So we're in the process of delivering about $14 billion in recovery from disasters, big hurricanes. Hurricane Harvey was the largest disaster this country has ever had to recover from. We've been rebuilding homes for thousands of families who need them. We've helped thousands upon thousands of small businesses stay afloat in those times. We're also currently in the middle of administering $1 billion in flood mitigation projects. So we are all still heartbroken over the floods from this summer. Not just that it was my old Senate district. My daughter went to Mystic. She'd actually been in Bubble Inn as a small child. We're all incredibly heartbroken over that. But the General Land Office was already looking at $1 billion in flood mitigation projects. We had already started a predictive and integrative flood study in Coryell County. That was one of the counties in the midst of all those counties that flooded. So we can actively look at ways that when that wall of water is coming, because no one would have anticipated that the amount of water that went over Niagara Falls in 48 hours fell in a small Texas canyon in a matter of 2 hours maybe. And that wall of water that would have come through, nobody could have predicted that. But if there's a way to possibly predict it, we want to be able to do that and save as many lives as possible. So, yeah. So I'll take my last couple minutes, and we do want to take some questions if you have them, but just to talk a little bit about why I think Texas values are so important and how much I loved working with them when I was in the Senate. You know, in the book of Jeremiah, it tells us, God tells us He knows us before we are formed in our mother's womb. So it is very easy for me to be pro-life. I have always been pro-life. When I was pregnant with my small children, my OB-GYN said, oh, we've got to do this amniocentesis. The risk of losing the child after an amniocentesis or causing harm to the baby was about 1 in 200. And I said, why would I put my baby at risk? Just so you can figure out if there's going to be a problem, because I'm not going to do anything about that problem anyway. So with the help of Texas Values, the heartbeat bill passed. We basically eliminated abortion in the state at 6 weeks. So many great things. Because the fundamental role of government, the biblical role of government, is to protect those that can't protect themselves, or to protect people from the evil intentions of your neighbor. It's there again and again and again and again, and there is no one more vulnerable than an unborn child. Also, with my experience on the school board, I was very disheartened by some of the reading material in the schools. So I passed a bill so that the Bible could be used for things like social studies reading, literature reading, those types of things. So it was a way to integrate the Bible into our public schools. That was a big part to Texas Values. We did a lot of really good things together. So again, I want to always have time to take questions, but I love being your land commissioner. We are running for re-election. We're out here fighting for you every day. I want you to know that. And it's just a blessing to be here with you. So God bless y'all, and I'll look forward to your questions. All right, I'll repeat it back. So, oh, yes. See, you'd think I'd planted that. How did I forget that? I was saving the best for last. So the Alamo, yes, we do the Alamo. Oh, my gosh. My husband loves it when they announce that my greatest love is the Alamo. Whatever. 33 years of marriage, he's secure. But anyway, so at the Alamo, what we are doing is actually, for the very first time since the battle, we're making a visit to the Alamo worthy of the events that have happened there. Because let's be honest, we are loud and proud Texans, and size matters, right? Everything's big in Texas. Can I get a big amen on that? And when we travel around the world, we don't say we're Americans, we say we're Texans. And it doesn't matter. So I tease, and I'm actually not teasing, our vacations don't have roofs and air conditioning. My family vacations, we're hunting, we're fishing, we're rafting, we're hiking, we're something. So it takes us to super rural areas. But it doesn't matter where in the world I've been. When I say I'm from Texas, the answer back is always remember the Alamo. Because around the world, the Alamo is known as that shining star, as that symbol of the ultimate sacrifice for your values, your families, your friends, and your fledgling nations. And we all stand a little taller because of that heritage. And yet, when we brought our friends and family and foreign visitors to the Alamo, you stood on a busy street corner and you held on tight to the kids because you don't want them to get run over. You had the lovely wax museum to your right. Yeah, that's funny. You can laugh louder at that. The owner of that museum loves it when I say that, by the way. And then your guests looked at the Alamo, and they kind of said, is that it? I had one person ask me, why did they move it downtown? You literally can't make it up. And the average visit was 7 minutes, and then people went on to do something else. So let's talk about what we're doing. So about 2 years ago, the Collection Center opened. You might remember Phil Collins, the famous British singer. He had a very special connection to the Alamo, amassed this amazing collection, bequeathed that to the Alamo, but said you've got to have a place to display it. Yes, very exciting. So that Collection Center opened about 2 years ago. I'm going to tell you about my favorite artifact because it was nothing that you would ever notice unless you knew what it was. So and I'm going to tell you, come now, and then come back in a couple years when we finish this project. But when you walk in the doors of the Collection Center, there's a glass case, hundreds of artifacts just for display right there. And in the bottom of that case is a tiny little wood carved axe about this big. There's this famous whittler named Sam Houston. There's this famous battle, San Jacinto. There's a famous bridge that they had to destroy to block the Mexican army's retreat. So when the Texian army destroyed that bridge, because Sam Houston was a whittler, they gave that wood to Sam Houston. He carved it while he was waiting around to find some general named Santa Anna. And that little axe is sitting right there in that glass case. It is super cool. So anyway, so the Collection Center's open, beautiful, all good. For the first time ever, we're building an education center for our children. We're going to have dedicated curriculum, early childhood, all the way to high school. When I say dedicated curriculum, I am talking the loud, proud, liberty or death, line in the sand, Texas history that we know and love. And that'll be done in about a year. And then where the Wax Museum was, we've acquired those 3 buildings, and we're building a 160,000 square foot museum. Now, of course, it is battle-centric. That is why everyone came to the Alamo. But we also talk about early Native Texans. We talk about the mission era because we wanted people to understand the history that led up to the battle. And we go through the battle. We talk about all the way to how the Alamo continues to affect pop culture even today. And in the center of that museum is a 4D immersive theater experience. You're gonna sit in a chair. It's gonna be behind a defender. And when those cannonballs hit, your seat is gonna shake. Ooh. And then you're gonna smell that gunpowder and smoke, and you're gonna be able to immerse in the story and the history of our battle unlike any other time. And then we get to the Alamo. Now, y'all probably know the Alamo was a fort, and what we all call the Alamo today was the church and the fort, so sometimes I use those words interchangeably. We're in process of trying to secure the original footprint of the fort, which does go through those 3 buildings. We're gonna delineate that so you'll know where the wall was. We've built the Mission Gate and Lunette so you get an idea of what it looked like when the Mexican army bridged it. But the Alamo itself, our beloved building, is in sincere jeopardy. So those limestone walls have been wicking salt water up out of the ground for a very long time. If you've seen limestone around a saltwater pool, it doesn't end well. We have real structural integrity issues at the Alamo. We have a roof that is beyond its useful lifespan and causing active damage to the building. One of the first fights I had to leave in America, there's this weird idea on preservation called preserve in place, i.e. let it fall to ruin. And I was told you don't get to talk about changing the roof on the Alamo. You don't get to fix anything. We're just going to let it fall to ruin. So yeah, I was like, oh no, you don't know how I roll. That's not how we're doing it. So we're past that now. But what it's going to take to get that old roof off, new roof on, and get the walls back to structural integrity is we're going to have to build a temporary protective structure over the Alamo. So kind of like a big barn. I'm going to be honest. We're going to make it as aesthetically possible as we can, but basically we have to cover it because can you imagine if we had the roof off the Alamo, we had one of our big rain dumps, we had one of our big hailstorms, it could cause irreparable damage to that building. I take it upon myself, that building is going to stand in 500 years so that our children and our grandchildren and their grandchildren can learn about our history. So the temporary protective structure is going to go up. We're going to fix the wall integrity issues. We're going to get the old roof off, the new roof back on. By the way, come for your once-in-a-lifetime picture with the temporary protective structure. We'll leave the west parapet open so you can get as many pictures as possible. We'll leave it as open to the public as possible. And then all of that's going to come down, and we're going to have a beautiful Alamo that is going to stand for 500 years. So the next thing to be completed is the restoration of the cenotaph in place. If you're someone who cares about where the cenotaph is supposed to be, which is out in front, not when they were going to move it around back. I was the one that threw down the legal challenge that kept it there and passed legislation reinforcing that. So we have restored that in place because it had some of the same structural integrity issues. Those scaffoldings should be coming down here in the next few months. It is gorgeous, so also that's going to stand. And then I'll tell you one last thing, and then I think we probably have to run, or maybe one time for one quick question. But every commissioner gets a map. So I'm sitting at my first remembrance of the battle, and this local superintendent gets up and says, "My people won at the Alamo and lost at San Jacinto," basically implying the story of the Alamo is only for northern white European heritage. And that is categorically false. We had basically every ethnicity represented as a defender in the almost 200 defenders. And so my map is the ethnic origin of the defenders and then where their families received their land grants. And it's the Republic of Texas overlaid with our, of course, current border of Texas and then the counties that existed at that time, because I want every child who hears the story of the Alamo to know that is their story. And when you come from brave stock that makes that sacrifice, that cares about their fledgling nation, then you are held up stronger to do the same. And so in every story, every child to know that and feel that and learn it. And then move Texas even better into the future. So that's my goal. And I think we have 1 minute. Are we good, or one more question? Oh, okay. Yes, sir.
My name is Dave. I'm from Texas. I'm 16 years old, and my question is, do you fear God?
Do I hear God? Oh, do I fear God? Oh, yes, absolutely. I hear him on occasion too. But yes. I was raised in one of those churches. I had an aunt that used to make fun of my mother and my grandmother because there's like, I don't care what day of the week it is. There's not a day that you open up a church door and you're not in there. So no, 100%. I grew up from a very young age. I was actually the first female acolyte, I think, in Texas. For sure in the Central Diocese of Texas in the Episcopal Church. I won't tell that story. I'm trying to think how to tell the story. Anyway, a lot of people called me a lot of names when I was 12, but I was like, if I want to serve God this way, what's to keep me from serving God that way? So yes, very much so. So with that, I think we're good. God bless y'all. Take care, and thanks for having me.